In order to understand economic growth and development, we must be familiar with a number of economic models. The specific focus of these many models differ. Some models focus on stages of growth that countries must pass through. Other models focus on saving and investment as well as industrialization. Others still focus on the power structure created by the global economic system. Some models highlight the importance of technology, while contemporary models recognize the possibility of poverty traps. Economic growth is clearly important for development. We might even be able to say that economic growth is a necessary condition for development. But at the same time, economic growth is not sufficient for real development to take place. That is, observing an increase in average per capita income is not sufficient to conclude that development has taken place in a particular country. Thus, economic growth models play an important role in helping us understand development, but we need to go beyond these models to really understand how to facilitate development across the world. In particular, economic growth must be joined by other changes for true development to have taken place. At this point, I want to emphasize inequality, and I will argue that economic growth without a reduction in income inequality should not be classified as true development. That would only be growth without development. What do we mean by income inequality? Income inequality is defined as a disproportionate distribution of total national income among households. That is, some groups of citizens receive a disproportionate large amount of national income, while others receive a much smaller fraction of that income. As you can imagine, in order to study income inequality, it is important to accurately measure the distribution of income. In economics, there are two common ways to study the distribution of income. One is what's called a functional or factor share distribution of income, and the other is called the personal or size distribution of income. As it turns out, the choice of measurement has significant impact on our conclusions, and I will argue that one is more appropriate than the other. Let's first think about the one that is inappropriate, the functional or factor share distribution of income. This measures the share of total income that goes to each factor of production, land, labor, capital, without any regard to who actually owns the particular factor. That is, it attempts to determine what share of total income labor receives, what share goes to landowners, and what share goes to capital owners. As a microeconomist, it hurts me to say this, but this approach is commonly used in standard economics and microeconomics because it fits very well with an assumption of perfectly competitive markets. In fact, if we assume perfectly competitive markets, then the price paid for each factor of production is equal to the value of the factor's marginal product. This is an approach we used in the Lewis two-sector model. But there is one blatant problem with this approach. In developing countries, markets in general are not perfectly competitive. The second danger of this approach is perhaps even more problematic, and that is that the factor share approach often leads to an argument that the current distribution of income is fair. And the reason is that since the factor share approach argues that each factor of production, labor, land owners, and capital owners, earn a share of income that correspond to their respective contribution to national output, the share they receive is actually fair. That is, if landowners and capital owners receive, say, 80% of national income, while labor receives 20%, it must be because land and capital owners are more productive than labor. However, again, this would only be true in a perfectly competitive world without any market failures or power imbalances. In the real world, there can be many other reasons for this unequal distribution of income, reasons that can be found in unequal power relationships and market failures. A final problem with the factor share approach is that it does not specify who actually gets the money. That is, a single individual or group could receive money from more than one category. A person can earn a salary, earn interest from capital, and earn rent on their land holdings. For these reasons, development economists prefer to use the personal or size distribution of income. And the size distribution of income measures how much income each person receives without any regard to the sources of that income. Hence, a person's income can come from wages, interest, profits, or inheritance. It does not matter. Only the amount matters. And the operational approach is then to arrange all individuals in ascending order of personal income, from low to high, and then divide the total population into groups, usually quintiles or deciles. And using these groupings, we can determine what portion of total national income is received by each income group or even each individual. And once we know these income shares, we can use a variety of measures to determine the degree of income inequality for a particular country. And the measures that we will focus on include the Kuznets ratio, which is found by dividing the income of the richest, say 20%, by the income of the poorest, say 40%. And we can change the percentages depending on our goals. And the second thing is the Lorenz curve, which plus the cumulative percentage of income against the cumulative percentage of income recipients. Sounds a little bit strange, but the Lorenz curve shows graphically how far away the income distribution is from an equal distribution. And if we want to put a number to that picture, then we use what's called a Gini coefficient. And a Gini coefficient is an aggregate measure of income inequality. It's an attempt to express a nation's degree of income inequality into a single number. And it measures the area created by the Lorenz curve and the line of perfect equality. There are many measures of income inequality, but they all help us understand one important aspect of a country's level of development.